Hello guys and welcome to End All Wars, a World War I grand strategy game by Ajod, which I've now featured some of their games on my channel, but this is the first one I ever found and the first one I ever tried, and I loved it. I thought of trying some of their other games, and I have, but honestly I haven't found one I really liked, or in the case of Rise of Prussia, the grand campaign just crashed every time I clicked on the UI. But this game I have played, I know it runs well, and it was a load of fun when I tried it. I played 12 hours playing as the Western Entente back in December, so 10 months ago. I don't really remember how to play anything, so I thought, we had so much bad luck with the other games, why not come back and try this one? Now let's just go ahead, get right into it, start a new game, and I'll kind of explain things as we go. So as you see, 107 turns for this full campaign as opposed to the historical 106. That's because at the beginning of the game, you actually get a chance to pick a war plan, which determines the start of the game. And you're not the only one that's picking your war plan. All the AI are, and there are three sides in this game. There's the Central Powers, which is just the Triple Alliance, essentially, and one player, if you're playing multiplayer, or even one AI, controls all of them. The Entente is split into two Ententes. It's not just the Triple Entente, it's the Western Entente, which is France, Britain, and most of the other countries to ally with the Entente around the world. And then there's the Eastern Entente, which seems like a side note here, right? Which is Russia, Serbia, and I guess some more Eastern European countries if they join. Now, what's a little strangely dysfunctional about this is the Western Entente actually controls all of the diplomacy of the entire Entente. So if you're trying to get Romania into the alliance, they're probably going to join the Eastern Entente, but only the Western Entente can directly utilize diplomats in the game to achieve that. There's some events the Eastern Entente gets, but overall, it's kind of a simpler game, sort of. I mean, the Eastern Entente and the Central Powers both have to deal with the nationalities of their troops, which is kind of complicated, but the Western Entente doesn't really have to deal with that, but they have to deal with the diplomacy, which kind of makes these two equally complicated, whereas the Central Powers just looks nightmarish to play. So to play it a little simpler, we are going to play an Entente. Seeing as I've already tried the Western Entente, we're going to play the Eastern one. And if this goes well, I'll do more playthroughs of this. One is the Western Entente, and then finally one is the Central Powers when I'm ready to get my ass kicked. Honestly, I'm feeling we're going to get our ass kicked right now, either way. So let's go ahead, select Eastern Entente, hit play, get in the map here, Guns of August. Let's try and zoom out. I tried to come in here and zoom out in advance because the map freezes when you first load up. Sure, you can see the lag. It freezes when you first load it up, so I tried to load in as much of it as I could before starting this. You see, there's pretty much nothing on the map. It's empty, just cities, no units. We can't see what the Western Entente does, which is kind of a shame, but they will be fighting the Central Powers just as we will, and we don't know how this war is going to start. France may go historical and try to attack Alsace-Lorraine. Germany might go historical and try to invade through Belgium. France might attack through Belgium instead. Germany might attack through Switzerland. I really don't know, and we have our options as well. So first things first, we're going to hit F3, and we're going to have to select a war plan. Now, there are 4 war plans we can do. First one is the Grand Duke plan. It's the historical one. Russia launches an early offensive against Germany to relieve France, but also prepares to launch an invasion of Galicia. Now, just to show you what that is, here's where we would invade Germany, basically east of this river. Our targets, I jumped in to take a look at this in advance. Our targets would be Tannenberg, which doesn't even have a city, and Königsberg, and we would ideally have to take these within the first couple of turns for it to be a successful first strike. Now, I don't think the Russians actually pulled this off in history. I think they got fucked up by the Germans pretty early on, and that's basically what I expect to happen to us should we choose this plan. Galicia is this area generally right here, and in fact, I can show you better. Political states. This is Galicia, this purple area here. I believe. Yes, this is all Galicia, and we'd have to take Przemysl and Lemberg from here within those first turns. We don't have to, but it would definitely be in our best interest to do so. Now, That's the default plan, of course. It has no penalties at all because it's historical. As you see, it has a number of modifiers. We lose like all of our rail capacity at the beginning, but we get some engagement points which can be spent on decisions. It shows where our troops will deploy, essentially, and it shows that kind of stuff for all of these. There's also the Polska plan, where we mass our forces for an invasion into Silesia and Galicia, both in Austria, from deep within Polish territory. 5 armies lined up against Austria, 1 army mobilized at Lodz to threaten northern Silesia. So this is heavier against Austria, I think. I'm not sure. Either way, I'm not picking this one. It has a penalty. You see, the Western Entente loses 5 national morale, and that's a very important thing. That can lead to you winning or losing the war. And if one Entente loses the war isn't necessarily lost. But ideally, you don't want to fuck over the other Entente because they're your friends. They're helping you directly or indirectly. There's the Berlin Plan, where Russia masses its offensive against Germany and stands on the defensive against Austria. 4 armies deployed against the border with Prussia, so twice as much as what would happen in the historical plan. And 2 armies are just simply kept in reserve over by, here by Galicia in order to hold off the Austrians, to try to deal a more decisive blow against the Germans. As you see, it has different penalties. The Austrians become emboldened and further aligned to the Central Powers because Germany is really the heart of it. It's kind of just 2 alliances combined into one, as opposed to they split up the Entente. And the Eastern Entente, we would lose 5 national morale. Not looking too good, but pretty good if you want to deal a decisive blow against Germany. Again, the Tsar plan, the final plan. Russia attacks Austria full force, sending all 6 of its starting armies against Galicia. The Western Entente would suffer a huge -10 penalty because with the Grand Duke plan, we're essentially promising to commit some forces to attacking Germany to help relieve France, who's under attack by Germany. But we're also, using 4 of our armies as we want to attack Austria, who's attacking our ally of Serbia. So we're kind of splitting between helping ourselves and helping our Western allies. The Berlin plan, as you can see, is kind of putting our own interests last by only sending 2 armies to Austria and instead putting full force into helping the Western Entente. The Tsar plan is putting our interests first, fuck the Western Entente. And then the Polska plan, I don't fully understand, but in some way, it kind of partially goes with us. Because, 5-1 armies. Either way, I'm going to go with the historical Russian plan. Because I do want to focus, let's take a peek, I do want to focus Austria, but not to the detriment of the Western Entente. The Western Entente is a great power if they retain power, It can include Great Britain very early in the war, or later, depending on what the Germans do. It could include any number of other countries. Belgium, probably not the Netherlands. Netherlands, I think, was pro-Germany in World War I. It could include the US, maybe Spain. I don't know. There's a whole lot of countries represented on the world. We can check in this little diplomacy box here. It can include a lot of these countries that could just help you out. And they're the ones that are going to get us most of those. So we want to help them. You always want to help your allies. And I think I'll play a pretty balanced approach then. So we're going to go with the historical plan. This is just an event telling us that we can pick a plan. This is just Archduke Franz Ferdinand being assassinated, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. His wife were shot dead in Sarajevo, by Gavrilo Princip, one of a group of 6 Bosnian Serb assassins, coordinated by a paramilitary group, the Black Hand. Oh, great. The political objective of the assassination was to break off Austria-Hungary's South Slav provinces so they could be combined into a greater Serbia. Though the liberal-minded Franz Ferdinand was not overly mourned by the ultra-conservative Austrian government, Emperor Franz Joseph and the Austrian military leaders used his death as a convenient excuse to press for war with Serbia, which would ultimately lead to the great catastrophe of the Great War. Now, the exact events of what happened was essentially This dude announced his public route. Archduke Franz Ferdinand announced his public route of like, hey, this is where I'm going to go on a little drive. And then assassins tried to get him, and they failed to get him, I think twice. And then eventually the driver took a detour and stopped right next to one of the assassins, just conveniently, which is hilarious, honestly. And then the dude got shot. And then Austria said to Serbia, hey, if you don't give us all of these things that we want, and it's ridiculous stuff, no country could give it up, like all your money, all your land, all your sovereignty, that kind of shit, then we're going to fight you. And Serbia was like, well, of course we can't give you that, but is it okay if we give you this stuff instead? And Austria said, of course not. Hey, world, look, they did this to us, and then they refused to give us what we wanted, so we have the right to attack them now, right? That casus belli, that's how that works. All right, to war. And naturally, with the web of alliances in World War I, that just did not work out so well. And then this just resets the fucking music for some reason whenever I click this, and all it does is repeat what I read at the very start. And you can see just generally, we have our message box here. It will give us all sorts of information to go through in the future, but for now it's just telling us general things. Central Powers accepts Germany and Austria. Western Entente accepts France. Eastern Entente accepts Russia. These are the only countries in any of the alliances right now. The Ottomans are not in the Central Powers. Serbia is not yet with us. Great Britain is not yet with the Western Entente. That will come, but these things are affected by the starting decisions. You see, we have some limited amount of gold and manpower and war supplies, nothing we can really work with right now. And we'll see our income and this stuff better in the next turn. And then you can see we have these things here. The Ottoman Empire is providing me with diplomatic aid. That's really fucking weird. But also pro-Entente, pro-Central Power sentiment affecting countries all over the world. So you can get an idea of who you can help. The other countries do have little modifiers here. Neutral ones will always move 1% towards neutrality every turn. Like the Netherlands, they're going to try to stay out of the war. They also have other modifiers here. For example, Holland must be greater 20% alliance towards Central Powers, and they will actually have a chance of gaining alignment towards Germany through this event called agricultural aid. And there's others that just don't have events or effects, like Afghanistan has nothing. They're really inconsequential, but you can get them to join you. And they're not neutral, so they won't try to stay out of it. They're not going to lean towards you or anything. Japan is pro-Entente, so if you're the Central Powers trying to get them to join you, you're going to run into some fucking problems. Whereas, as you can see, you're going to have some damn good ease getting them to join the Entente, as they historically did. Which led to a whole bunch of other problems leading up to World War II. Great Britain has all these things, the US has all these things leading towards the Entente. Luckily, we don't need to concern ourselves with this as the Eastern Entente, but if this goes well and I end up doing a Western Entente playthrough, which I hope I will, I'll get more into how all of these modifiers work and how we would exploit them. As Eastern Entente, we can ignore this. All we really need to do this turn is set our war plan, which we have, and then hit end turn and see what happens. I know that there's a couple things that can happen because the Central Powers actually gets to pick 2 war plans, I'm pretty sure. One for Germany and one for Austria-Hungary. And Germany can either, do the defaults like I said. They can also just decide to focus all their troops over here and invade us while just trying to hold off the Western Entente. Austria-Hungary can focus Serbia. They can focus Russia. They can do some weird splits. They could maybe help Germany. I don't know. They have a couple options as well. We can only cross our fingers and hope to God that focus Russia is not something that happens. Because the more beat up Russia gets, and I guess I'll show you this now. Let me open the Strategic Atlas. Russia, as you remember, did not survive all of World War I. They had the Russian Revolution, and they became Soviet Russia, and then they bowed out. There are events in this game to make that happen. We're on a timer, and the worse we do in this war, the worse that timer is for us. The better we do, the more we could push that off. And there's a whole bunch of negative things that come with the Russian Revolution for us, and we want to avoid it as long as possible. So the more they focus the West and Serbia instead, the better. Russia's this big power, but it's very vulnerable. So all we can do is hope for the best. So let's hit next turn and do just that. And see what everyone else decides to do, including the Western Entente. The Western Entente could also just play defensive, which I hope to God they don't. But let's find out. This could go historical or ahistorical. The historical scenario, of course, is a way to skip the chances of it and just make everyone play historically. But, you know, every other age-odd game has the problem of it just goes so historically. Like Civil War II. You're either pushing south or pushing north, or you're getting pushed south or you're getting pushed north. It's so predictable that it's boring. This is not predictable, which is cool. Alright, let's see. Serbia rejects Austrian ultimatum. This is the historical result. Serbia had its own war plan it picked as well. Yeah, so he did what I said. He rejected what the Austrians wanted, and now the Serbians have joined us. They are now in the Eastern Entente and will help us fight Austria. Great. The Germans picked the Ruprecht plan. This is not historical, I don't think, or is it? Invade Switzerland instead of Belgium and Luxembourg. This is not historical. Okay. Well, the good news is that Germany will not be focusing us. They are going, wow. You know, when I did a little test of this, they went for Belgium instead, which was historical. But see, this is why I love this. You can have multiple playthroughs of this because you never know what's going to happen. Okay, cool. So Germany is going to be invading Switzerland and trying to push into France like that. Italy will shift randomly but heavily towards the Entente is a consequence of this. So I don't know if we can really check that. We might be able to if like we come over here and find Italy. Yes, okay. So they're supposed to be like neutral right now, but you can see they gained a 25% boost towards the Entente. So if I remember correctly, by doing this plan, Great Britain actually isn't in the war yet. If they had invaded Belgium, Great Britain would have joined the war immediately. But since Belgium's neutrality was not hurt, then instead Great Britain will actually take a little bit of time to join. If we look, they are 86% leaning towards the Entente. So right now the Western Entente is only France. But Italy is more likely to join earlier because of this move. Actually, the Swiss may have joined. So Switzerland has joined the Entente instead. The neutral power has joined the Entente. They have war weariness though. Oof. Yuck, that must be a consequence of this. It says can be removed by doing a right click on the icon, but it's not anything I can do. So, interesting new start. France and Switzerland versus Germany. That's really cool. Luckily, that keeps Germany out of our hair. Although it means Belgium and Luxembourg and their troops may never get involved in the war because they probably want to keep neutral. Where is Belgium? Bulgaria, Serbia. Where's Belgium? Holland, Belgium. There is the neutral one. Oh, we can also see the Ententes. The Western Entente and the Central Powers have put their diplomats places that we can see now. Oh man, France is going crazy heavy. Yeah, I have a whole bunch of decisions here that technically I can do, but I don't want to do them because they have negative effects. I just want to try to ride it out without having any of those happen, but France is going heavy on the decisions. Looking at the diplomats that have been allocated, we can see that France is trying to get Greece to join, which is silly because they're a neutral country. Good luck, I guess. But one diplomat probably won't do a lot there. The Central Powers are trying to get the Netherlands to join, which makes a lot of sense. They're having a good amount of luck towards that already, 3% towards them. Both sides are fighting over getting Belgium to join them, with really no luck either way. Oh, they're printing state funds already. So they're going to have more money with which to kickstart. I skipped over doing that stuff because it comes with inflation and some other stuff I'd like to avoid. The Western Entente, thankfully, is trying to get Japan to join them and is having good luck. This would go better with Great Britain on our side, though, I believe. But it looks like they've already unlocked this pro-Entente modifier, so I think Japan is in the bag. We will get Japan to join us. They will be on the Western Entente, but that's pretty nice. And that's what's happening over there. Let's check the Austrian plan, the Kaiser plan. Austria attacks Russia in force, opting to deal with Serbia at a later date. This is another ahistorical plan. The penalties, Central Powers alignment in Austria, minus 20%. Holy shit. Central Powers alignment in Germany, minus 10%. So remember how I was saying earlier the Austrians could be emboldened? Well, this is the opposite of being emboldened. They've just lost 20% of their alignment. I'm not really seeing that have an effect currently, but neat. But that means Serbia is actually fairly safe, defensively speaking. They don't really have a lot of troops with which to push out, but as you can see around their borders, there's no Austrians here. The Austrians have chosen to attack us in full force, so we're going to have a lot of attacks happening here. We're doing an early invasion of Germany, and then we have 4 armies that are going to unlock later around here. So we can try to hold off for sure and hopefully counterattack. Maybe Serbia could push out. Maybe. I know they've left some defensive forces. But this is not what I wanted. Unfortunately, we're going to have a tough time as Russia in the beginning. I was planning on, attacking Austria in full force anyway. But looks like I'm going to also have to defend now on the Russian front. That's going to change some plans I had, because I wanted to build up Serbia's military and try to hold on here as much as I could, maybe push out while pushing some Russians down here to exploit maybe an undefended northern border. Our offense here is not going to do well at all, mind you. The French have gone with Plan 13. This looks like, this is also ahistorical. Wow, we have a really interesting start. The French army assumes a defensive stance in the west, hoping to draw the German army towards the heavy fortifications on the Franco-German frontier. This has hurt their national morale and hurt their alignment. Great. So essentially, what France is hoping to do is lure the Germans into attacking this region here, this heavily defended region. Which they may. They also may not, because we know they're going to be attacking Switzerland. Hopefully this works out for the Western Entente and that national morale doesn't hurt them too badly, we can only hope. And then we know what we're doing. Eastern Entente got Serbia, Western Entente got the Swiss, and you can see all these things moving. And that's the event. Now we have to make our moves. Well, we only have 2 armies with which to really worry about right now, and one of them is right next to a place called Gumbinnen. It's also a bunch of deactivated armies, meaning we're going to get some penalties. This place is very poorly defended though, so I'm not too worried, especially with Germany's attention focused elsewhere. I'd like to capture this entire region so we can place these 2 armies fortified in Thorn and Elbing, and kind of hold our own on this front while making some kind of defensive and then offensive here. That's my plan. But we need a successful offense before such a defense can be accomplished. So first things first, this army setup is terrible. This dude's providing 22 command at the moment. It's just very poorly done. This is a cavalry leader, and we have another cavalry. It's a Cossack, but we can make this a little more efficient by merging this commander with this cavalry unit. Now we have a little bit better of a situation, but still not optimal. We have a bunch of corps associated with this army. Corps, I don't know how I'm going to pronounce it, but let's take one of these infantry away and move it into this army corps, which is now maxed out as well. He now does not have a command penalty, so we are much better off. We are going to turn on the synchronized movement so that when this army moves, all associated corps will move with him. He actually has some kind of like a debuff. -2 command points because he's arrogant. So the corps are actually more efficient than his army. Either way, let's take him and march him onto Gumbinnen. He will arrive there in 14 days, which is slightly less than a turn, hopefully attacking when he arrives and capturing the location. That's the goal. He has some artillery. All my armies, I think, my big ones, start out with 1 artillery. 1 medium artillery is what this is, which should hopefully be enough. Again, this is an undefended place. Our real objective over here is Königsberg. Next, have to come down here over to our second army. We have a similar situation of inefficiency here. So I'm going to go ahead and merge the cavalry here. They still have a similar situation. He actually has 2 more commanders. He's not arrogant. He is, however, hot-headed. So he won't retreat in the first 2 hours of a battle, which sucks. We're going to take this infantry and put him in this corps. There we go. Means, you know, they miss out, that infantry misses out, I believe, on this bonus here, but we also miss out on the penalty for inefficiency. So now we're going to set synchronized movement and see what we can do here. Let me just test this out first. Can we get to Tannenberg in 1 turn? 14 days, it seems that we can. Okay, so let's reset that movement. Synchronize movement. Let me lock all of these so I don't make any mistakes here. And it looks like we can get to Tannenberg in 1 go. This is kind of secondary. Lotsen over here. We can go for this, but remember our objectives right now. And I believe we kind of get a bonus if we take these objectives. Let me take a peek. Let's see. Objectives at this place during August and September. Yes, I believe if we get these places and hold on to them, by that point we will actually get a bonus. So I'm going to kind of rush, I guess, you know, set my goals as Tannenberg and Königsberg. We take these, and we will have a much better off situation than we otherwise might. We have absolutely no rail capacity, so this has to be entirely infantry marches, unfortunately. So down on the Serbia front, I'm opting for a bit of a snatch and grab kind of start to figure out how much wiggle room we have. First off, the Serbian HQ's setup is terrible. It's just inefficient and stupid. So let's take this militia division and move it here. These guys have little medals indicating they're actually pretty experienced, which makes sense because I think it was just before World War I, the Balkans had a huge war with the Ottoman Empire. So that would make them fairly experienced, if not very numerous. Alright, that has completely fixed our problems here. So here we have not a lot of power. The Serbians are not very powerful. Going on the offensive with them is probably not the most advisable thing, but fuck it. If they're going to attack Russia, we might as well take advantage. So I'm going to synchronize movement. I'm going to move these 2 armies across this little river here. It's going to take them a bit longer since they're synchronizing. It's going to take them 13 days instead of 6. And they're going to try to secure this. It only has a small defense of 80 power, so I'm assuming our HQ and another army could take it, one of them deactivated or not. And then there's these 2 other undefended-ish areas that I want to snatch across the river to kind of hold as defensive points. We have some more, well, we have 2 more armies that will be unlocked later. One from Montenegro, which isn't Serbia, but is. I don't really know why they're with us. And this one. And I'll take a peek and see what we can do. I'm not planning on pushing this way. I would like to kind of secure down here, this area by the coast, if possible. But ideally, I also want this fortress. This is a good fortress. It gives us a step out from Belgrade where we can defend. And, well, you know, it's a fortress. So that's certainly very nice, especially since it's also a railroad that we could cut off access. And it's defended by another river here, as you see, unless they try coming down this way. But this probably isn't very optimal for them, seeing as all their troops are up here. So I think it's a good plan, I think. We also have some planes and stuff we can use, like some aerial planes for reconnaissance. We have 2 groups of them, but I'm going to leave them be until I get some rail capacity to kind of keep them where they are. We also have 2 fleets. I'm going to be leaving those fleets be, though, because I'd rather not go super offensive with those fleets. I want to use them in a defensive capacity, if possible. Here's the objectives screen, by the way. We can see a bunch of things here. For example, we can see the relative naval strength and land strength as compared to us. Our value is 100 in each of these instances, which shows that we actually have more land power overall than the Western Entente. But they have more naval power than us. The Central Powers have more in both categories, especially naval power, which is why I don't want to just throw my navy out there. You know, when the Great Britain joins the Western Entente, this will skyrocket. And then they can deal with it, unless the Germans come to me. in which case I'll handle that when they do. We can see victory point gain, victory point total, morale, like national morale. As you see, they went down 10 because of their war plan. We can see everything that we need to kind of own. We can see what the enemies want to own at any given point in the war. You can see Switzerland, parts of France, etc. But our objectives are different parts of, Austria. We need to hold on to Paris, of course. Hold on to Moscow, Petrograd, which is, I believe, St. Petersburg. We need certain parts of the enemy territory. It's a good place to get an idea of how you're doing and where you need to be going. And now to actually go ahead and recruit some units. I'm going to kind of stick to my original plan because Russia's strong, at least, and Serbia now kind of has some breathing room. They can't even get a whole lot of units, so I figure I might as well take advantage of what they can, supply trains aside, and try to make as strong of a Serbia as I can since they've been given the wiggle room to do what it is they want to do. One very notable thing is that they only have 2 total available medium artilleries, which is kind of bad. And we already have 1 of them. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of build that right now in Belgrade, the capital. It's going to take literally almost all of our war supply, which hurts and gets in the way of recruiting other things because even the most normal infantry needs war supply. We do have an income of 86 war supply a turn just from current structures, etc. And there's more stuff we can build, like if we go into the decision mode, we can build some munition factories, we can build some depots, we can unlock fort guns, we can get money, state funds, by essentially doing printing, which of course I want to avoid for the time being. Go back into here. One thing we can still recruit, though, with money and conscripts instead of munitions are militias. Not the best, but Serbia kind of has to do with what Serbia has access to. And we don't have any munitions, really, any war supply to recruit more than 1 of any of these units. That being said, I'll still go ahead and get some of these units. I'll probably go ahead and get a cavalry unit building back here. They can only have 1 more after this. And then we're, of course, going to want to build something else. And a militia division will be good enough for now. And that's all we can build in terms of their locations. As you see, they've run out of locations to build things. I still have some money and conscripts, so there's some more stuff I can do. Not the best stuff without war supply, of course, but still stuff I can do. We can have 2 more Russian Cossack cavalry units. Cossacks is like a nationality. The Russians and the Austrians, for example, have to deal with their nationalities, just like the British need to kind of deal with their colony units. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to get what Russian Cossacks we can. Where to build them exactly, I'm not sure, but on a rail line, certainly, so we can kind of get them up to the front, which is pretty far away from them, but, once we have our rail lines, we can get them. It's going to take them, 3 turns to build anyway. So let's put 1 here, and put 1 here. 2 Russian Cossack cavalry units that will be able to reinforce the front line whenever we get a chance to. Now, while we're over here, I also want to get some support troops for my 2 armies going into Germany, because assuming our attack here is successful, they will end up serving rather defensive roles for a little bit. So, for example, I'm going to want each of them to have an engineer unit, because they get a bonus while sieging, but they also get a defensive bonus. And these can be great modifiers. 10% defensive bonus is better than 2 more units thrown in there. So I want to get those building for these units. So we're going to get 2 engineers building. Takes a lot more money than anything else, and then that will help them in the long run. In addition, another thing that could prove pretty handy to something that could be a slog of a defense in the long run are some field hospitals. So I'm going to also purchase 2 field hospitals over here, and that's going to go towards these 2 stacks as well. That spends pretty much all my money. I do have an income of 293, and I think that'll keep up pretty fine with my war supply. I can always print money if I need more. My conscripts are holding in there just fine. I will have to deal with the Austrians full force, so that could work away at my manpower, But seeing as I also have the Serbians to help me do that, and if we get lucky, maybe the Romanians, I'm not too worried. And so with this, we've selected our war plan, we've done our starting actions, and we are ready to finally begin the war and start fighting. I know all that setup and explaining things took a while, but that's pretty much all I'm going to get done for this episode. We will officially kick off the war and begin the fighting next episode. So I hope you guys are enjoying this series, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of it. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know how you think that this is going to go. Make some predictions down in the comments. I'm curious to see how far this strays off from history. But for now, I'll see you guys on the next one.